Yeah, because
but Amy will get on. But
Everyone, we're live streaming.
We have a long-term agreement with them.
We're live, folks. We're live, being recorded.
thanks, Dad.
Thanks, Rick. We'll pick it up offline. Thanks.
I can answer fast and just say yes. How about that?
Yes.
Nice.
And I think we're just waiting on the mayor.
Miko, tell him to get on.
Dudley, are you hiding from us for a particular reason?
What was that question, Peter?
Yes,
I said, are you hiding from us?
yes. I'm exhausted. I'm tired.
We were just discussing about long meetings.
I heard, I was listening. But that was short in comparison to some that I've attended there.
Oh, yeah.
That's all I was sharing with them back in 2016. We had that bike lane closing.
But it only takes 2 or 3 subjects. It's all night long.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So who won the game last night for the River Dogs? Anybody know?
River Dogs won.
River Dogs.
6-1, I believe.
Yeah.
They won, and they're heading over to Myrtle Beach for the second and third game. It's kind of strange. Is read the article how they operate this. The first game is home, then they play the next 2 games on the road.
Is best of 5 or best of 7?
Best of 5.
Oh.
Yeah, so then they'll play the next 2 games at home.
Rick, is it best of 5 or best of 3? I got the impression it was just a best of 3.
I was talking to them this morning, and they led me to believe it was the best of 5, Peter. But I could be wrong.
I read it pretty quickly this morning. I just was trying to follow when their next game was, if we have another game.
It's the best of 3, y'all.
3, yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Can we get started? It's already 7 minutes in.
The mayor is just getting on now, Councilman.
Hey, everybody. Sorry I'm a few minutes late.
Mr. Mayor, I know about that.
No problem.
Yeah, somebody missed that photograph yesterday. We're not going to mention who that was, but the official city portrait. That person will remain anonymous.
Councilmember Waring, I'm following your leadership.
Listen, man, I miss Harry in that regard.
Might be dragging a little bit. For some reason, I was up late last night. I can't remember why, but
because we all ate late and we gotta sit up before the food goes down. I was too. I was up late.
All right. Have we? Did y'all go ahead and get started?
No.
Oh, okay. And Amy's here. Good. So let me go ahead and call this ad hoc budget advisory committee meeting to order and ask you to join me in a moment of silence in prayer. Amen. Thank you so much. So we're just going to be walking through some of our departmental requests for next year. And it's not surprising to council members that the top of everyone's request is to take some consideration, which we have been all doing, of general payroll and wages and benefits for next year. So I know that's on everybody's top of mind, and we certainly will work on a plan to do as much as we can for next year on that. But just to let you know, on the top of every department's prioritized list is to address, pay overall in the city. But that being said, they each have additional requests for, specific equipment, some positions, and Amy's going to walk us through, I think, 4 of them today, what their specific requests are, I guess, kind of over and above their normal budgeting needs is the way I think we're presenting it. Right, Amy?
That's right. So it's anything above their base budgets. And so we'll start with planning, preservation, and sustainability. And so Robert's on here to kind of walk everybody through that. Robert, I'm assuming, do you have a PowerPoint?
I do. If
I'll
looks
stop
like I have
sharing.
a share button. Nope, I don't have share. So Jennifer, Andrew, if I could possibly share, that would be great. Or Amy.
I think you should have, look at the bottom. There should be a green button that says share screen.
Yep, it said I couldn't for a second, but now it says I can.
Yeah, I had to stop sharing mine, Robert. I'm sorry.
No worries. Sorry about that. So can everybody see this?
Yes, I can.
Yep. All right. So just to kind of orient the committee as well as anyone who may be watching this, real quick, the Department of Planning, Preservation, and Sustainability, our specific mission is to improve the built environment and the quality of life for all people in the city of Charleston. We do this with a focus on being waterproof, being inclusive, and being balanced in our approach. And then you can see some of our core functions there as well. Specifically at the top of those core functions is to use the comprehensive plan that the City Council adopted as their guiding policy directive, and use that in our efforts to create a more resilient and equitable future for the City of Charleston. Again, more specifics are listed there as well, not to belabor them. This is the department as of now, and I want to start off my budget presentation by acknowledging the mayor and this council, or the complete council, as well as this committee, and Amy and the team in BFRC. Thanks to the efforts of last year's budget process, we were able to improve our position count to help address some of the services that we deliver to the community. Specifically, we were able to get a position in our planning division to help address our annexation efforts. Again, I think we had this kind of conversation yesterday, not to push out our boundaries any, but to take care of some of those inconsistencies where we have these donut holes, as I think a recent editorial in the Post and Courier reminded everybody, where we've got kind of these breaks in city services where it creates quite a bit of consternation and confusion for folks about what jurisdiction has responsibility for their trash, stormwater, other things. So that position has been a great add. Additionally, we've been able to add some additional support in our preservation division to help us address issues out in the area of BAR jurisdiction, where we've unfortunately had some activity occurring that is not supporting the adopted preservation ordinance for the city of Charleston. So this is what the department looks like right now. This team supports more than 110 public meetings per year. That includes supporting council committee meetings, as well as all of our various boards and committees that the department is responsible for staffing. That 110 doesn't include all of the public outreach meetings, the efforts that we do in conjunction with assisting our neighborhood associations with their meetings, and other special event type activity that this team also supports in one way or another. So again, I'm going to continue with this tagline that I used in last year's budget presentation, because I do think it's still very relevant to the discussion around planning and the department's operations coming into next fiscal year. We continue to be this evolving historic city, and that juxtaposition of those two concepts of trying to preserve that history and the things that have made Charleston great and make Charleston a destination not just for folks who want to visit and go home, but folks that want to call this community home, has created this evolving conversation, I think, around what does Charleston look like going forward. Once again, I've broken my budget request into kind of three areas of I think categorization, if you would. The very first one is restoration and just the cost of service adjustments. This category, we're asking for a little over or a little under $29,000 in additional funding from our current base. This represents about 1.8% of our total 2023 requests, and it is an increase of a little over 46% of what we requested last year. This would restore money to our budget program that was cut due to the COVID cutbacks that occurred a couple years ago. We still are not back to our pre-pandemic budgeting level for things as simple as even our postage, certified mail. Additionally, we have a number of services that we use, such as MuniCode and a few other digital services where the costs of those services have gone up. So we need to be able to cover those costs. And just another couple miscellaneous things, we need to replace some office chairs. That's actually added a few $1,000s to this list. And then providing security here at the Gilead for public meetings. Again, there's some, the police department did a security audit. There's some things in there that we'd like to be able to do just to make this facility during all those night public meetings that we do be more secure for our citizens coming, as well as our staff that are conducting those meetings. And of course, if you have any questions on anything, please, Councilman Shade, please stop me and ask.
You know, one of the questions that have come up to some of my constituents, Robert, about security is I know we have a security guard at the entrance, but and you mentioned security for public meetings. What is your charge? I mean, that in a way, what is your responsibility for that building for everyday general operation time? Is that coming out of your budget or is that coming out of somebody else's budget?
No, the regular operations security, I'm not sure whose budget that comes out of, but that is not out of my budget. I would assume that's out of the real estate or facilities budget. However, the overtime that is required to cover security in those evening meetings for Planning Commission, BZA, BAR, those have been requested that the planning department make that budget ask to cover those requests, since they're directly attributable to our work.
So is overall security a responsibility of the city fully, or is that, Amy, is that something that's our responsibility, or is that shared responsibility with the Gilead?
So it's really ours. They would be in charge of anything for their shows or anything like that. And to answer your question in terms of where it's budgeted, we have a building budget for the Gilead Center, and that's where we budget those type of complete building-wide expenses. Did I answer your question?
Well, you broke up a little bit at the end. So it is something that the city shares with the Gilead, or?
No, that's completely our expense. We don't hire security for their shows or anything like that. If they want a security for their shows, and that would be their responsibility.
But the regular operation is our responsibility.
That's right.
Whose budget does that come out of?
So it's the building's budget. It's not a specific department. We have certain expenses that are for the whole entire building itself, for all of our buildings in the city, and that's how we budget for those items.
Okay. Thanks for the clarification. Thanks, Robert.
And that's actually all of that's under my department, Councilmember Shade. So it comes out of really my budget.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir. So that's our requests relative to just continuing to try to get an effort to restore those pre-pandemic budget items. Mainly it's in our supply area. The one area that I do want to highlight that I missed, and I apologize, was prior to the pandemic, this department across all of our divisions really does quite a bit of work in the community and outreach and what have you. And so one of the asks that I get routinely, and I know our folks in BFRC, because we constantly are going to them and asking, well, if I move a little bit from here to here, can I make this hospitality purchase because we have this open house, or we have this community event that we're trying to work on, the working with the city expo, things like that. So we are, again, requesting to get that hospitality budget. It's a relatively small amount, but having that ability to do that at these events is, I think, an important component to the work that the team does out in the community. All right, next, people. So again, I don't want to belabor this. I think this goes back to what the mayor said at the introduction. We all know that the backbone of city operations is really the people, the folks that are out there doing the work every day and the services that they are providing the constituents in our community. And so this one, we are asking for an increase relative to our people portion of our budget, if you would, of approximately $287,000. This does represent just under 19% of our request. And this actually is a reduction from what we had requested last year in this category. We are looking at 5 new positions relative to this request. The very first one is a position that both myself and Gianna have been talking about for a while. We actually do this service with one of our planning division planners. However, the need and the focus has grown such that neither Gianna or I believe that it's appropriate for it to be a secondary or in the tertiary component of somebody's responsibility. I think collectively we feel like this position has the ability to have really drastic change in getting affordable housing projects moving through our very involved system faster, even with all of the improvements. And I guess I need to underscore that, our TRC team, each of our departments and divisions that handle development have worked extraordinarily hard and continue to work hard on finding ways to improve getting affordable housing projects out of our systems as quickly as possible. However, we do continue to find a need for someone to help expedite those projects. And that's really what this affordable housing concierge offers as a position, someone who can help navigate our processes, but also stay on everybody, both the city side of the team as well as the outside side of the team on these affordable housing projects, to just make sure that things aren't getting missed, that there aren't unnecessary delays occurring from any lack of communication or what have you. So an important position. We would actually be looking for, like I said, Gianna and I both have put this position in. I think we both agreed that as long as one of us gets it, we're very happy. I think that given the nature of the development work that we do in the planning department, we would make a really good fit. We've been doing this work for a while, but there it is. Additionally, just like last year, the work of the Civic Design Center keeps expanding. The requests that they get for providing additional images, documents, documentation, assistance with design projects, both internally from other departments, as well as using their expertise in more of a community setting, that continues to grow. And so we're once again requesting another urban design professional for the Civic Design Center. Just cannot underscore enough of the work that division within planning does and how much it helps to be able to see what we're talking about, not just some words and tables and some numbers on a page, but actually see what that means often in real time in some of these meetings that team helps facilitate. Next, we are asking for a mobility planner. This is a position that in working with our resiliency officer, our sustainability officer, working with Katie, as well as working with my fellow Robert over in TNT. We believe that a mobility planner will offer us an opportunity to capitalize on some of the mobility related efforts that are going on in the community and regionally, and provides a great linkage point between the land use planning that we're working on, as well as, again, some of those transportation related projects, sidewalk infill projects, things like that, where this could be an opportunity to have a person, once again, sort of like the affordable housing concierge, dedicated to that work, working across departments to help facilitate and get some of those projects done, as well as work with our capital projects team and others on possible revenue options to help assist with some of those projects. Next two positions I want to speak about just for a second. So the city has begun the work of creating an entrepreneurial resource center. This will be in the city, the housing project at James Lewis. This is a tremendous opportunity that we have there, and the work has already begun. We expect that facility will come online and be available to us to begin serving the community there the latter part of next year. So we are asking to begin the process of staffing that. Ultimately, we believe that we will need a partial year of a coordinator that will help get the folks in, get their documentation, review that for the folks that are going to be using that center. And then we believe, again, because of the admin that's going to come with that and some additional admin that we already have a need for in our business and neighborhood services group, that we also need an administrative professional to assist us with there. Finally, there's a lot of other stuff here. I am spending a lot of time on people just because I do think that that's very important. In addition to what the mayor said and what you all that are on, particularly on the HR committee, have talked about with regard to compensation, one of the things that we have found, particularly in the planning profession and in the folks that work in the planning department in that field in general, in addition to being properly compensated financially, one of the other big things that helps attract and retain is a huge piece of this, is the opportunity to continue to develop professionally, the ability to be able to network with other professionals in the field, attend learning things. Planning as a profession is not static. It continues to evolve. Councilman Appel, I think, we've had some of these conversations before about the ongoing nature of, what is zoning and what does it look like 5-10 years from now? So having the ability for my staff and my team members to continue to develop, I think, is a crucial component of being able to retain them in this organization and show them that we're willing to invest in them. So we've made a pretty significant request to be able to reinstitute, and I say reinstitute because my understanding is there used to be some budget for staff development that had fallen off in more recent years, even prior to the pandemic. So we're billing that as a new request. So those are, and then finally, overtime, you're going to probably hear this from every department. Again, we've been working for the last couple of years where when folks need to work a meeting at night, and these are, again, the hourly folks, not the folks like myself and other department heads or managers, but the hourly folks, the base salary folks, when they have to work a meeting until 8 o'clock at night, that means the next day or Friday, they're working a shorter day, which means there's reviews that are not getting done. There are customers that are going to be helped on Monday that we could have gotten back to a phone call or what have you on Friday, but because we had to offset those hours is not happening. So we're making a request to be able to have some overtime in our budget, specifically for our zoning and preservation teams who, work quite a few night meetings. So this would be what our org chart would look like if we were successful in being able to add these positions that I've requested here. We would add that affordable housing concierge to my admin team. The ERC positions would be working with our Office of Women and Minority-Owned Businesses, or enterprise manager. The mobility planner we would look to add to our planning division. And then, of course, that additional urban designer we would look to add to the Civic Design Center. Any questions on people? And seeing none. All right, so then project. I'm sorry, Councilman?
I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
And I had to step out for a few seconds, but when you go back to the public review boards, and I had to step out, so if I missed this, I'm sorry. But one of the things, and Councilmember Ware and I had discussed this following a history commission meeting, the folks who serve on these boards, of course, none of them get paid at all for the work they do. But it would certainly, I think, go a long way if we help them with their parking expenses. I mean, not only do we not pay them anything, if they park in a garage or on a street, we don't even cover the cost of doing that. I don't even think we supply them water or coffee or any kind of refreshments during the meetings. If they bring something, that's fine. But I really do think that on all of our boards and commissions, whether it's in your department or somebody else's department, we should be covering the cost of parking and at least just some basic refreshments for these folks. That's the least we could probably do for the folks who dedicate their time and energy for us. So that should be a very small item, but that's something I think that all department heads, I would hope, who are responsible for boards or commissions members would take that into consideration.
So Councilman, so while I can't speak for every other boards, I do know that we do cover, validate, whatever you want to call it, for parking for our board members that support Planning Commission, BZA, BAR here at the Gilead. So I don't know about if they attend things at other facilities, but I do know that we validate their parking here. Additionally, once again, sort of what I was talking about before, we have, when we've been able to, because of the reduction in funding, we do try to at least provide water for meetings. I don't know if we're able to do it every time, but where we can, we've tried to make that effort. But that again is a part of our request on the restoration, is to be able to have those relatively nominal funds available to be able to do that, not just for board meetings, but again, for those public meetings that we hold out in the community as well.
Yeah, thank you for that. I appreciate you making sure that takes place.
Absolutely. All right, so then finally, we do have some projects. These projects, as you might imagine, just because whenever you're doing a project, they generally, although nothing compared to the extent of what you get in a capital project, they generally are bigger dollar amounts, more zeros with asterisks in them. So the projects portion of our request do equate to just over $1.2 million. This does account for almost 80% of our 2023 request. It is less, though, than what we requested last year by almost 19%. And part of that is because we last year we requested full funding for the zoning ordinance and the peninsula plan. It was funded in part, and so this year we only have to ask for a part of that funding. So the big ticket item, if you would, is going to be that zoning ordinance rewrite phase 2 funding. Last year, you did fund the first half of what we believe will be a $1 million project. I am going to throw out there that is out for solicitation at this time. So we don't know what numbers are going to come back on that. And we all know what is happening or has been happening in the marketplace with regards to just escalating costs, even for things like services. That does play into the next one, where we have requested some additional money in this budget request for the Peninsula Plan. I think we were a little ambitious in our, or conservative in our budget request last year for what we thought we could procure for those additional services that we need to support staff who will take the lead on the Peninsula Plan. So it won't be a consultant-led project, but we did acknowledge, and we do acknowledge, that there is expertise that we need in order to do the kind of job that the community and the neighborhoods on the peninsula need for that plan to be successful. We need some additional services that we can procure, and we need a little additional funding for that project. Finally, we have a big ask with the Entrepreneurial Resource Center. So in addition to the fact that we do need to address future staffing for that, we do have some one-time costs to upfit the facility. We're going to get it in an, I think it's a rough shell state. So we're going to have to upfit that. We're going to have to complete the outfitting for the C-store, convenience store, market element of it, as well as the co-working type operation that we're going to have for the main portion of the Entrepreneurial Resource Center. Additionally, we've requested money once again to be able to try to update our historic property surveys. All of our surveys for our historic districts are woefully out of date. That compromises our ability to get grant funding to help offset costs for projects, both private and public projects in those areas. Additionally, and this won't come as a surprise to some of y'all who've been in some of these email chains, there's other neighborhoods outside of the peninsula that wish to explore the possibility of their neighborhood receiving some kind of historic designation and acknowledgement. In order to get to that place, though, we need to be able to survey those neighborhoods to determine if they meet the Secretary of the Interior standards for such a designation. Additionally, this is an area of funding request that allows us to leverage the city dollars with grant opportunities. In fact, we think there's opportunity for up to $30,000+ from the state, that if we have city funding to do some portion of this project, maybe we don't do it all in 1 year, that we can get some grant funding. Finally, we have the settlement communities. That was a big piece of what came out of the comprehensive plan effort. And so we've been working diligently to take that to the next level. Council approved via Ways and Means a few meetings ago, a grant application to be submitted to get some additional funds so that we can go to that next place in terms of inventory and researching our settlement communities, and do specific outreach to those communities to find out, what they need, what they want from us with regard to helping them take whatever next step they may be looking for those neighborhoods and communities. And then finally, we've been working in our BNS group specifically on a King Street facade improvement program. While vacancies are way down on King Street, we still do have some vacancies. We'd like to see if we have an opportunity to create some kind of incentive or programming to help improve those properties. So with that, this is kind of the summary of where our budget requests are for FY23 for planning and preservation. A fair amount of money obviously is in those projects. Most of those projects, though, are one-time expenditures. They don't have ongoing reoccurring costs. We do have, obviously, with restoration requests and our particularly new positions, we would have some, ongoing costs relative to those requests. And with that, I'm prepared to answer any questions. Councilman Waring?
Yeah, thank you. Can you touch again on this the survey for, I guess, historic outreach and settlement communities beyond the peninsula? What is that for again?
Yeah, so the settlement communities, so there's two things. One, there's the survey for historic districts. We have a number of historic districts that their last surveys were decades ago. Some, today is my, God help me, 46th birthday. And so some of those surveys are even older than I am at this point, because they're from earlier in the 70s. So I guess if y'all want to give me a birthday present, just rubber stamp this and that would be great. Anyway.
Yeah, happy birthday, by the way.
Thank you. So
can you call out a couple of communities to give example?
I could, if I could remember. There's a number of them that are identified in the comp plan, and I apologize. The names.
That's okay. You can.
But Maryville, Ashleyville is one of those areas where there's I don't know if it clearly calls itself a settlement community, or at least it holds a lot of the characteristics of a settlement community, where again, I'm sorry.
It is. Yeah.
It is, yeah. So that would be one of the communities where we would be looking to do a deeper dive on, that one's I think a little easier in that the boundaries of that community have been pretty well established. But there are other settlement communities where, again, just because lack of documentation relative to settlement communities, they just weren't given a lot of attention or thought about, unfortunately. The extent of those settlement communities, Jack Primus is one, up on Cainhoy, where we would be doing some of this work. So it's to work with those communities, not tell them anything, to be clear, but to work with them in trying to help understand where the kind of the boundaries of the community are and what the community's interests are relative to, are they looking for future development, and what would that look like within the community? Are they not looking for future development? Are they trying to kind of protect that neighborhood, that community, kind of in that state, in an effort to hold on to that history that created them as they are? So
on that note, let me ask you a question. Actually, have you ever seen where a community like Maryville or Ashleyville had something passed where would prevent people from buying 2 or 3 houses, tearing them down, abandoning property lines, and putting in McMansions? I think that's one of the dangers to those settlement communities, by the way.
Yes, no. There are. So, there are different zoning controls that you can use to limit the scale of development, if that is the community want, to keep from the creation of the quote unquote McMansion type development. Now, again, as we continue to balance the protection of neighborhoods against the need for additional housing and affordable housing and those kinds of things, we're going to want to have a larger conversation about, those types, but we're going to get into a lot of that, I think, with the zoning rewrite. But to your point, yes. So that is one of the tools that can exist under zoning controls that can minimize, reduce opportunities for the consolidation of lots and the creation of, McMansion type developments, particularly in a historic community.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? All right. Oh, Councilman.
Well, what kind of council member would I be if I didn't have a comment on my favorite department at the city? Don't tell Matt Fountain. I'm intrigued by this affordable housing concierge position, and I'm happy to see that this is part of the budget request, because if you've spoken to Gianna, if you've spoken to others in the private sector that are trying to do affordable housing in the city of Charleston, it's very complicated. And sometimes we can, be a bit of our own enemy a lot of times when you have, projects that we all want to really see happen, run into all kinds of resistance and difficulties, whether it be at the VAR, or DRB, or other sorts of forums. But what I'm interested in addition to having this sort of staff position to help navigate these projects through, do we envision, whether through this staff person or otherwise, we can start developing ideas for how we can perhaps amend our zoning ordinances, amend some of our practices to help provide less friction in the regulatory process for affordable housing projects, while making sure we take care of stormwater and aesthetic considerations and things like that?
Absolutely. So for those of you who know Chloe Stuber, she acts in this role currently, but she splits her focus between trying to take care of this, working with our settlement community effort, working with our other projects in our planning division, which is why we feel like between Gianna and I, we feel like we need this to be a full-time, this is someone's focused effort. But that's absolutely a big part of what she does in that capacity as the affordable housing concierge. It's not only to work in an attempt to expedite those affordable housing projects through the city's systems, but it's also to kind of diagnose those pinch points and look for and propose options that may be able to address those. For instance, tomorrow at CD committee, I'm going to be talking about some adjustments that we are looking to make to the ADU ordinance. That work comes directly from conversations that Chloe has had with folks who've looked at doing an ADU, but because of our current rules, it's created a pinch point and they haven't been able to do that. Additionally, Gianna and Chloe particularly, and Chloe and other members of our housing and community development team, honestly, if you looked at our calendars, you'd see probably a dozen meetings a month at least on all of our calendars, specifically around this issue, because it is important to us, but it's also one of those unwieldy things that just trying to get your hands around everything can be difficult. So it's something we're continuing to work on. And this position would give us a point person whose primary focus is just that.
Wonderful, Robert. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. And I think having somebody wake up every day, go to work at the City of Charleston, thinking about how we can improve our processes for approving affordable housing units, getting projects already in the pipeline through, that is just fantastic. So well done on that. And I think we should fund that position. I think it's very important.
All right. If there's no other questions for me, I'll turn it.
I do have one more.
Yes, sir.
Along the line that you just finished talking about, when it comes to doing a lot of, in particular, owner-occupied affordable housing that can be placed west of the peninsula, West Ashley, James Island, Johns Island, sometimes can take the form of, 6, 8, 10 lots. Our rules right now, I think if it's over 4, they have to comply with the same guidelines, basically, as somebody doing a 200 house subdivision. Over in Ardmore, Ms. Shaw Johnson would be familiar with this. I think it's 8 townhouses we're trying to do over there. And somehow rigged, it's all affordable housing, eventually owner-occupied affordable housing. But our subdivision rules, I think, goes down a little bit too far, to the point to where it adds to the cost of creating affordable housing. So I think that a simpler guideline should be, I don't know, maybe it's 10 lots, but certainly it shouldn't be less than 10, and that's where we are now. The guidelines for doing a new subdivision that's going to be put on 100 acres is one thing, but it shouldn't be the same for infill, and particularly when you're trying to create affordability. So if you can look into that as we look into this ADU, I know the ADU is already on the agenda, but the process of getting victories one at a time, is there a way, or have you seen a way that we could maybe have a charrette around these ideas? Councilman Pell has been pumping ideas since he's been on council. We have good conversations, but getting to the actual action steps is a transition that we need to create more efficiencies around. Anyway, I just want to throw that out.
Understood. Not to oversell it, but I think once we get the process begun for the zoning rewrite, Councilman, you're going to see a lot more of that synergy of kind of conversations, throwing some different ideas together and see where we can get more than just one-off victories as we're working through that process. I truly believe we will see a lot of that as we are working through that process.
That's great.
All right, Amy, I turn it back to you.
Okay, next we have recreation, and I believe Lori is on to go through that.
I am, Amy. Are you going to share your screen with the budget request information?
I can if you'd like me to.
Sure, that'd be great. So let me start by saying that that I appreciate this opportunity to talk to you all. I'll try not to go too in depth because just like Robert, I can talk forever about the work that happens over here in the recreation department. So I don't want to take up all the time, but I do want to make sure that I go through and at least explain and answer any questions you might have. So I'm going to be one of the few people in the world that are going to share that while COVID was a terrible thing in our community, and I know there was lots of loss, there was one positive thing that I can see every day that came out of COVID, and that was our community's love and desire to have parks and recreation facilities and programs and events and activities in their communities and around where they live and work. We have seen that since the original shutdown, and we continue to see it now. Our numbers in participation are back above pre-COVID numbers. We're at close to 6,800 children this fall playing sports, which is huge. So we're very excited about that. And you couple it with the traction that we've started seeing from the Parks and Recreation Master Plan and the use of some funds for this year that we had not knew we were going to have, that are going to be put into some facilities, and then the discussions we've been having at the standing rec committee level about how we could fund different parks and recreation projects that are needed in each part of the community. It's just a lot of great things that are happening in recreation right now. So I'm happy that I'm able to talk to you all. The theme to my budget this year is return to COVID numbers, because basically that's what we're asking for. I'm not looking to do an add to staff. I'm not looking to create new this or that. We're basically trying to regain funding that we had prior to COVID. When COVID hit, we understood our role in helping to keep expenses down while still providing services. We did that. We've used soccer goals where we've welded them back together. We've kept orders down in equipment and supplies. We've cobbled together orders for different things in our office supplies departmentally to make things work. And we've really reached the point of now we've got to have some of these funds, these expenses return back to where they were before. So I'll quickly hit some of that. Overtime in our department has essentially not existed since COVID. And in order to have full-time folks working for you out in the field and in my department, it is actually out in the field. They're standing on ball fields and courts at night. So we need overtime. And then I'm going to run through a litany of other things that are going to sound like, wow, you're trying to buy things for the department, but it's really just passing them on to our program numbers. So when you see uniforms and protective clothing, that's the increase in cost for ordering uniforms for our sports programs. Right now, there's a shortage of another number of items, including things like football helmets and cleats and things like that. So all of the costs for all those things are really, really high right now, including the uniforms we put all the kids in. The printing costs are up. So I need to have that number restored. The pool supplies, while we've had great cost savings from MLK and having that new dome put on that our parks department was able to put on, we still have a need for pool supplies in the form of chlorine and other chemicals that we have to buy every year. Youth sports, we need to continue to buy and add to our ability to have an inventory for balls and equipment. We have held off buying new windscreens at both Charleston Tennis Center and Maybank Tennis Center. We need to purchase some of those. And then we've got a number of other supply issues where we've not purchased new flooring for our swimming pools, just things that we need to buy in order to offer our programs and have them cover the robust number of community members that are participating. We've got a couple of employee travel and training requests. That's basically though for our swim program and our gymnastics program. Both of those programs have coaches and city instructors who must travel with those kids as they're participating. So those costs, we really need to add that back. Plus we're renting St. Andrews Parks and Playground swimming pool again this year. to make up for the loss of WL Stevens not having it as a year-round pool. So we'll continue to eat those costs. Give you a great positive story. Daniel Allen Rec Center, since it's come online, is really, really doing well. The revenues are running high. The participation is really good. The church that we're now renting to on Sundays had their big kind of welcoming for everybody last Sunday. I think the mayor was there and they had a record number of folks. So things are really going well on Daniel Island, and the residents there are enjoying and filling up the rec center that we provided them. Our tennis programs are bringing in more revenue as well. That's the teaching programs that we have. So where we have asked for additional expenses, that revenue is coming in high as well. Got a number of capital equipment items that are in here, or non-capital equipment items, things we've not purchased from the past that we now need to replace. Things like mats in our gymnastics center, tables and chairs in our playground buildings and community centers. We've got some new stairs. We've got a new lift we need to purchase for pools. We need to make sure that we've got enough dry deck flooring. So all of those things are things we've not had money for in the last 3 years. So we're asking for that to be put back into our budget. Additionally, we've asked for some part-time and seasonal dollars to go into our budget as our numbers have increased and we're now running a full calendar again. And we'll end with just a couple of comments that I can make in terms of our revenues being up this year. Our expenses are up, but our revenues are up as well. That trend has been across the board in everything from concessions to summer camps to programs. So we're very excited about that. But in addition to revenues being up, we've also increased the number of partnerships we're working with across the community. I know you all approved an agreement we have with the Wings program that's now started at Arthur Christopher Community Center. We've now got 35 kids in that program. We're doing the same good type of partnerships at other places like St. Julian. We're working with Charleston County School District. We're working with Be a Mentor. We're working with Cradle to Career. The boxing program over at 1099 King Street is going really well, and they're having good numbers over there. So there's a lot of partnerships that are happening in the community that don't necessarily require a city employee or a city dollar to run, but because of the facilities that you all help fund and provide for each area of the community, we're able to bring in partners to help really give it a more robust programming. And I think that's really being seen in some of our communities. I'm hearing great things. I'm also happy to tell you all that the business enterprise manager that our Parks and Rec master plan recommended that we hire, we did offer this position and it has been accepted. So within the next few weeks, we'll have a new business enterprise manager starting with our rec department. And that will hopefully bring in additional dollars and partners and programs, not necessarily to bring in tourists, but to provide things that will make our own community and our own citizens have much more participation. We're going to definitely work on wellness and healthiness and things like that. So I'm very excited about that position getting started, and that it could mean some additional revenue coming into the department that we would in turn put right back into our citizens, which is what we do. Our dollars are not spent on fancy this or that. It's we've learned to work pretty well in this new world. We're doing a lot of webinars so that everybody's keeping their trainings up. It's kept the cost down. It's kept travel down. But we are busy doing that work and need to have all of our funding restored to that level of pre-COVID to continue to do that. So I don't really have anything specifically that I need to share with you, except to say thank you for considering our additional funding, and I'll answer any questions you might have.
Lori?
Yes, sir.
Two questions, and one of the issues that came up earlier this summer was swim instructors.
Yes.
So are we covering to make sure that we have all that taken care of?
Well, I'll start answering that by thank you for helping with the $15 an hour increase that you all voted on a couple of meetings ago. I'm hopeful that you all will continue to look at the pay metrics across the board. $15 is not a lot of money to pay someone to be a lifeguard. And I haven't seen an increase in folks applying for work here at the city since you did. But it certainly helps lay the groundwork for that. One of the things we're doing though is we're working with our swim team. We had some parents that are interested in getting their lifeguard certification so that they can help out more and be lifeguards. And so we've got a new lifeguard certification class this coming weekend. We got 12 of those folks signed up to take that certification. We did a lifeguard certification 2 weekends ago. We'll be doing another one in October. So we are definitely reaching out, Councilmember Shea, trying to get certifications out there in the community so that we can hire more folks. The other portion of that I think is helpful to us is that we are going to start working with budget and finance to start cobbling some part-time positions together into full-time positions, trying to find folks that are looking for full-time work. There's just not a lot of people right now in the job market looking for part-time work. We just don't have that many applications coming in, but that is key to us, is being able to have lifeguards and have swim lessons in the future.
So what would you think is the magic number? If it's not $15 an hour, is it $20 an hour? Is it $25 an hour? What?
Well, you know, if you looked at other places around us, they all do some different things. And a lot of people say, well, Lori, why don't we just do a waiver, or why don't we just do this? We're a public type A pool. And because of that, we are required to meet the DHEC requirement to the letter. If you're a private swimming pool like St. Andrew's Family Fitness Center, you don't have to use lifeguards. You can have a pool unattended because folks are paying for memberships, and that's not the kind of pool that the city of Charleston owns and manages. So we are held to a very high public standard because we are a public pool. The closer we get to $20 an hour, the more it's going to help make us a place that folks are going to say, wow, look how much they're paying. I mean, we have people that leave us for 50 cents an hour. So that's just the job market right now. And so the closer you bring all of those hourly rates up, you know, in a department of 225 people, 150 people in this department receive the personnel action forms to sign to get that extra $1 an hour. So that's over half of this department was making less than $15 an hour.
Well, I just want to make sure that whatever we need to do, because swim lessons, such an integral part of our community. I mean, and a drowning is so preventable. In losing one person, one child, because we didn't have adequate staffing, because we didn't pay enough money, is on us. So I would just, whatever you need to do, whatever you need from council, you certainly got my support to make sure that is funded to the level you think it needs to be funded. We'll leave that to your good discretion, obviously. But I just want you to know, whatever we need to do to make sure we got enough lifeguards on duty to make sure our pools are open, but also for swim instruction. It's just so critically important.
Absolutely. And I appreciate some of the creative thinking that came out of last summer, Councilmember. Councilmember Waring put me in touch with Barbara Dilligard over at CCSD, and they were able to supply a couple of water safety instructors to teach classes, and we made pool space available. And so that was a cost savings for both the district and the city, and yet city children got those lessons. So there was some creative thinking going on, but we are definitely working to make sure that we're offering as many trainings as we can. And I know HR is tired of hearing me talk about the need for higher wages, but I'll continue to talk.
And one more question before I let you go. I would presume this is more under the Parks Department expense, but I saw earlier in one of our meetings, lighting for the tennis centers.
Yes,
that's going to fall under the Parks Department budget, not your budget.
Any kind of improvement to a facility like that will show up in the Parks Department.
Okay.
So the lighting for Charleston Tennis Center and Maybank Tennis Center will come out of the Parks Department budget. Typically, we kind of draw the line in smaller equipment like bleachers and players benches and nets, soccer goals, those kind of things. Those are covered out of recreation, and the bigger items are covered in our Parks Department. So
okay,
sure
I figured that was going to be your answer. I just wanted to. Well, I had you captive. I wanted to make sure I asked that question.
Mr. Kronsberg's going to be in charge of that. So that's great for us.
And Mr.
Thank you.
Mayor.
Thank you, Lori.
Yes, sir.
Councilmember Waring had his hand up, followed by Councilmember Shealy.
Yeah, bro. I want to start off by thanking you, and I'll tell you why. 2 years ago, when we were in the depth trying to put together a COVID budget, I mean, we were down to literally counting pennies. And I remember you went back and looked through your numbers again and came up with some ideas that, if I remember, saved somewhere between $200,000-$400,000, somewhere like that. But it was a breath of fresh air when you don't want to furlough people and keep people on board. Okay.
That's right.
And for you to be coming now and asking just to be restored to where you were prior, I just can't tell you how highly that speaks of what you do. So I want to thank you for what you did a year and a half ago. I mean, you stepped right up. And quite frankly, being out here in the hinterland and council, we don't know the specifics sometimes where, dollar can save or be better used. So, we all appreciate you so much. I think you need to know that. When it comes to W.L. Stevens Pool, we renting the PSDs, St. Andrews Parks and Playground, PSDs pool. How much are we paying for that? And is that becoming the new normal? That can't become the new normal because W.L. Stevens is surrounded by got to be 1,000 homes, if not more.
Right. Well, Councilmember, I first thank you for the kind words. I appreciate that. I try to spend the city's money like I do my own, and that's pretty carefully. So anyway, but speaking about renting St. Andrews Parks and Playgrounds, a couple of things about that. It's allowed us, and the cost is pretty nominal. They're charging us a fee, a per lane, per hour fee that includes the lane rental and their price for lifeguards. But we're able to split our practices up a little bit between MLK and their pool, and take care of our kids in the winter months in that pool. It's also helped because it's a slow time in their swimming pool, and it's allowed the PSD to keep their pool kind of moving for their members. It's not a long-term solution, but it's certainly affordable enough right now. And our parents, those 300 families of smart swimmers, those families pay to train with our swim coaches, to go to swim meets, and for the lane rentals and use of the pool at the city's pools and at this pool we're having to rent. So we're trying to keep that as cost neutral as we can. And I feel like our friends over at St. Andrews have been very fair with us. And so we do a lot of things together where if they don't have something, we try to share what we have with them. So it's been an economical situation. I've just not had it even budgeted for. So at this point, we're just asking that little bit of money that we're paying out be put into the budget so it doesn't come out of that travel. But it's not a bad cost for what we're getting. And the fact that we couldn't have W.L. Stevens open in November and December. It's just too cold. You wouldn't let your grandchildren swim in the water, and I wouldn't go swim in it either. So we need to do that. And it's worked out really well for both parties, because most of their members tend to swim in the mornings and during the day. So that late afternoon hour has been a time that they've been able to set aside 4 lanes for the city.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Lori, thank you for all you're doing. I appreciate everything that you're doing. We had one of your very dedicated volunteers show up at City Council last night and was asking me a couple of questions, but he had said that the downtown groups are having to travel more to outside areas. Is that a big expense for us? Are we paying for them to travel to Mount Pleasant and other areas?
I don't have anybody going to Mount Pleasant.
Okay. He mentioned Mount Pleasant, so I don't know.
I'm not sure which volunteer, what sport that was, but what we've done is the only sport that we've got a few less kids participating in, and this has been a trend for the last couple of years, has been tackle football. But we are staying just within the city to play tackle football. So we'll either be playing all of our football games either at Stony Field, and then the Saturdays that the Citadel's using Stony Field, we'll be probably either at Ravenel or at the new Camp Road field over behind the Camp Road Middle on James Island. So all of our football games will be in those areas. Daniel Island is staying on its own for flag football and soccer so that those parents don't have to travel. Gadsdenborough gives us all the soccer fields we need downtown for soccer. James Island baseball and West Ashley baseball are the same, and we have enough fields at Bayview and at West Ashley Park. So our moving around is really minimal. And we've been able to do that. We did last year play a little bit in one of the ages with Mount Pleasant, and we talked to them this year, but we've got enough for a small league in each age group ourselves, so we don't have to travel at all.
Okay. Well, I can talk to you a little more in detail about what
Right.
he's saying later on. Yeah. He also asked about, about cameras and around the rec areas, and that may be a parks item on that, I guess.
Well, I will say, and I shared this with the mayor when I met with him earlier to discuss my budget. I did ask for some money. So within the Parks Department budget for maintenance and for capital projects, they have a number of customers, and one of them is recreation, since some of the facilities they handle are parks and recreation. I did ask for some additional dollars for updated security cameras so that we could better monitor some of our facilities. Unfortunately, anytime something happens, the police department comes to us and asks to borrow our camera footage. We're happy to supply it where I have it. But I don't have it at all. Some of our older facilities don't have it at all. And so we're not always able to do that. But in the instance of that shooting of the young man several weeks ago at Martin Park on a Saturday, the police were able to use all of the footage we had from our swimming pool. And so that helped them, but we share all that. But our bigger tennis centers, James Island Rec Center, none of those have security cameras. And it certainly would be beneficial for our staff to have some of safety security measures like that. We don't have any kind of security guards at any of your parks or any of our facilities like you do at other city buildings. We don't have a metal detector or anything like that. So the ability to have some security cameras in our building would certainly allow us, if something were to happen or go wrong, to help really investigate it more quickly and make the facility safer.
Great. Well, thank you, Lori. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Councilmember Waring?
I do have one selfish request.
Yes, sir.
I get one a year, don't I?
Yes, we all do. We all get one.
Prior to COVID, that big cedar tree over there, W.L. Stevens, close to the road that the people used to like to have decorated as a Christmas tree. I can't tell you how many people missed that thing. What do we need to put in this budget to be able to do that?
I think I'd let Mr. Kronsberg answer that, because it's a question of can that tree still be decorated that way, and do we have the ability for them to put the lights up and take them up, because it's all a matter of putting lights up and then just turning on the timer. So if there's a way to do that, Mr. Kronsberg and his electrical folks could certainly answer that.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'll address it to him. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Laura, you mentioned a couple of times that fees were increasing better than last year and more activity. Do you have like a estimated annual amount that you're thinking we'll receive? It kind of helps justify things, if you will, when we know that extra income is coming in. Just wondered if you had an annual.
Sure. Well, when we broke it down, Mayor, by division, we were able to kind of chart what our tennis program has brought in at Charleston Tennis Center. We have a newer, he's been here with the city 3 years now, but he's really developed a really good foundation of lessons and clinics and camps. So we have a pretty good historical tracking of his work and his income. So we definitely raised that budget by at least $30,000 or $40,000 this year over to next, because we really feel like we'll bring that in. Our youth sports numbers are up. So that revenue, all of the revenues are predicted through what we've taken in through the month of June when we put our budgets in, and then the historic tracking. So we definitely have, I think the last time when I met with my budget analyst, we were about $350,000 over revenue, which is great. I have some over expenditures as well, but it'll certainly help keep us in at least a cost-effective position. But we continue to sell sponsorships for teams. I'm hoping the new business enterprise manager will bring in some new folks that want to partner with our department and with our city. And we're an exciting place to be right now. My phone's ringing off the hook about Stony Field and the track and what can we do there when Burke's not there or your rec department's not using it. What else can be used for? And I just think there's a lot of opportunities right now while folks are looking at us and seeing the great works that you all have put in the community, that we really make those places well used. So I'm really excited about getting Justin working with us and what he can help produce in the next 6 months or so. Because Tom had always, one of our consultants, Tom O'Rourke, had always felt like the number he could bring in was maybe an additional $200,000. So if we were able to do that, that would certainly give us more revenue without having to raise taxes or go up on fees for our residents.
Gotcha.
So I'm sorry, I'm just gonna cut in for a second. So Mayor, in all of the requests and the revenue numbers, the additional revenue they're projecting would be around 619,000 for 2020, 2023.
Geez.
Solid, thank you.
Yeah.
That helps us mentally.
But put that in perspective, it's also increasing fees a little bit, so.
Yeah. That's all right.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amy.
Ms.
Councilmember
Yarbrough?
Waring?
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad you mentioned Stony Field. Some of us, and I don't know if you ever saw that drawing, but some of us saw, this is going back years ago, some were not on council at the time. There was a drawing and a movement, small movement in the community to tear down Stony Field, turn it into green space, and part of it would be a dog park. So I'm so happy to hear about how Stony Field is being looked at in a wanting way, man. So this is wonderful. Glad to hear.
Well, I appreciate that, Councilmember Waring. We'll pass that along to the folks that helped do it. It's really great to see it pour down rain, and 30 minutes later, Burke's over there with all 35 of their players practicing. Wow. And before, if we'd have been doing that, they would have not been out there. We'd have been protecting the field for their game coming up. So it's really cool to see those high school students having that facility to play in.
Do you think Wildlife Expo will have a use for it in February when how they dominate how to use Burbank Park? Will that be maybe an extension to some of these?
It certainly could be. I mean, everyone had the wisdom and foresight to say, how could we use this place as a maybe a place for some concerts or special events if it doesn't bump into rec use or Burke use. But I can certainly see that it would be. It's certainly a good service after it rains or anything like that. You're certainly out there, and the Cooper River Bridge Run is going to do the first special event, the first Sunday in October. They're going to do the kids run. We haven't had a kids run in a couple of years because of COVID, and they didn't want to do it in the spring. So we're going to do that on that Sunday. So that'll be the first group that's really out there using it, other than just for sports and athletic use. So I think you'll start seeing some things like that.
It's great to see it come back to life. Thanks again.
Okay, so we still have the golf course to go over as well. We wanted to go over that real quick.
You want me to do that one?
Yes, please.
So the golf course has asked for additional dollars, and I had invited Marshall to join in on this meeting. I'm not sure if he's in here or not, but they're looking for new money. This does not include money for restrooms or anything like that. This is all for adding some positions so that they have more folks that can work the front desk, that can help do other work, especially during the busiest times of the year. They use occasional and temporary staff as needed. They also would like more overtime, because the way they do their shifts during the growing season, they've got to bring in folks really early in the morning and get them off the course before play catches up to it. So there's 6 and 7 day a week mowings and greenskeeping work that has to go on. They've got some equipment leases that they want to bring in and use. Obviously, all the improvements that have been made on our golf course with the work of Troy Miller and his expertise. When you get a great course, you've got to take care of a great course. And so they are asking for some additional dollars for equipment and for supplies. They want to bring in Amy, will you go back one? I'm sorry. they had a request in there for, to do some tree management. We've got a lot of trees in there. We need to be checking those regularly for hanging limbs and any dead areas like that. Also, they want to put in some netting along Maybank Highway. We get a number of broken windshields and car windows every year that come in that are claims from the golf course, and it's very difficult to figure out which foursome or which group hit that car. So the city pays for those claims, and so we're looking to put some netting in, both some restoration of old netting and then some new areas to do that protection. Thank you, Amy. Routine maintenance work that needs to be more. We've always kind of gotten by with the maintenance dollars and cents that we had, but the more that you can aerify and top dress and use chemicals and fertilizers, the better your ground's going to be, and the more wear and tear and holding they're going to play. All of right now, Boykin Powers, our head golf pro, is running programs for kids and adults, every space you can find on the course in the teaching areas. So we're trying to make sure that Boykin and his program have enough supplies for all those classes and those kids. Continue to see rising in prices with having to do with gas and oil and all of our cleaning and janitorial supplies. The cost of food goods for our grill and snack bar continue to go up. So there's a number of needs that the munis needed and asked for in years past and hasn't quite gotten funded to the fullest. But they have asked for additional dollars this year to help keep the course in the great shape it's in and make sure we continue to have 65,000 rounds each year played and continue to make it as affordable as possible for everyone. So I think that should hit most of that, Amy.
I'm pretty, yeah, Lori, because I mean, most of this is pretty routine, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
What is the taxes there for 112,000 increase?
Amy, do you know that one?
I should.
If you don't, nobody else does.
Yeah.
Amy, this is Kathy. I think
Yeah.
it's admissions tax.
That's right. I'm sorry. It's
Also
admissions
sales
tax.
tax on the gift shop.
Yep,
Right.
that's what it is. Sorry.
Okay.
Admissions tax. Everybody good on the golf course?
Yeah, I just want to make a comment that it's not my errant golf balls that are going over the highway, Lori. So don't blame me for my golf shots cracking windows. But whatever we need to do, because the golf course is turning a nice little profit, by the way. What was that last figure, Lori, if you remember?
It was in the neighborhood of 300,000 to 400,000, wasn't it, in the positive? And I mean, we've had some expenditures, but we continue to see our revenues go up there as well. So
yeah.
Peter, it's those houses on Golf View that are concerned about your golf ball.
That may be true, Rick. I'm not sure if it's the Golf View people or the one on Maybank Highway. But my point is, with Lori's presentation, we've spent so much time and energy redoing this golf course. We got to maintain it to the level it is getting a lot of positive attention, and it's a major asset for the city now. So I would certainly urge my other committee members to support her with whatever increase that they need on the golf course.
Yeah, I heard this morning that through August they were, well, of course, everybody knows that 2021 was a record-breaking year for the golf course, but they're up 1,000 rounds over where they were last year, is what I heard this morning. So they're doing some incredible work.
And that's 100% tied to the drainage issues that have been fixed over there, because poor Marshall and his crew had so many days before where they would not even be able to open the back nine, or we couldn't open the range. And so with that, being able to control that water and getting that course back up real quick after heavy rains, it's really kept the amount of play on the course very heavy, but you wouldn't know it from going out on it. The greens and the tee boxes are in great shape.
The other thing, the design has helped some of the neighborhoods in terms of drainage as well, creating those retention plans. So it's not only is a great golf course, but it's done some things for the surrounding neighborhoods as well. You know, Kevin, it's the old story, build it and they will come.
There you go. Yeah, that's right.
Okay, everybody's good?
Thank you all.
Whose
Thank you,
district is
Lori.
that? Whose district is that golf course in?
So nice of you to bring. Sometimes I'll just let others heap the praises on this. I don't have to do it all the time myself, but I just wish I knew how to play golf. I'm more of a water person, but I applaud Troy Miller and everybody else involved in that effort. I think it's a perfect example of the sort of public-private partnerships that are going to take us to the next level in the city of Charleston. Very excited to hear, Lori, that y'all have brought on that enterprise manager. Is that right? Because we have so many wonderful assets and so many opportunities to tap into so much of the wealth and the value that's created in our city all the time.
Right.
Sort of some of our resources and getting cut in a little bit on the action. And I'm just really excited to see what that position will bring, but let's keep it up. Thanks.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lori.
Thanks,
So,
Amy.
next we have the Parks Department, and I believe Jason is on.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Hello, Jason.
I have another very long list for you, so I will try to get through this efficiently. I have West Chapel and Edmund Most online with me as well, just in case I need any backup. I want to thank BFRC for taking all of our requests, putting them together, working with us to kind of streamline the process. So with that being said, I just want to share my screen for a minute, which will be the my budget, the Parks Department budget request. Can everybody see that? Which let's see, make sure I'm sharing the right screen. Sorry. Screen one, share. All right. Is that on?
Yes.
Okay. So our number one priority is pay increase for all our employees across the board. I know you all have heard that, and I think that should go probably across the board throughout the city. Right now we're 30% down in budgeted staff members. That runs across the board from project management through facilities maintenance and grounds maintenance. And it's tough when we're building new stuff every year to take care of it all to this level that everybody expects it to be taken care of. And I'm going to get into the list of parks and facilities that we've added over the last 5 years in a minute. Our second priority was overtime. Prior to the COVID budget crunch, we had a large overtime budget that we utilized to get the work done, whether it was a rainy week or the lack of employees. Right now, our overtime is consumed by both the downtown and West Ashley Farmers Market. So that pretty much eats up our budget for overtime. With our low staffing rates, we haven't planted a lot of trees, street trees in the past couple of years because, quite frankly, we water trees on the weekends. We got to water trees if we plant trees. All the various special events, Spoleto, holiday trash patrols, after hours, urban forestry, emergencies, street tree watering, athletic field work. When we get all of these rains, we can't do the work in the week. And to make up for our low staffing levels, we do have employees that want to work overtime, and we get a lot of work done on the weekends. So the increase gets us closer to really what we need it to be. In the past, I will admit before my time that there was probably a little inefficiency with the overtime that was spent. So this has been really a good reset, but it does limit the kind of work that we can get done after hours to supplement for all the extra work we're doing in the week due to our staffing levels and extra duties that we're requested to do. So we kind of skipped over 1, 2 to 3. We lost 3, but our fourth priority was some new equipment. We need a small mini excavator that'll make us more efficient. We don't have one. We've typically been borrowing them or rent them, and this would just make us a lot more efficient in doing park improvement projects throughout the city. Now, if you'll let me pause here for a minute, I want to take this off the screen, and I just want to read to you all what we've added in the past 5 years. And I hope you'll bear with me and let me read through this list. These are not only parks, but they're also facilities. Each one of them requires maintenance, as you all know. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. This is over the past 5 years, and it'll also include some work that we've gotten accomplished. We've taken on the 134 Cannon Street, which is the Charleston Arts Center. We have the DeReef Praise House and Park that was renovated and added into our portfolio. The MLK pool enclosure, locker room upgrades, and complete mechanical system upgrades. All of that stuff requires daily and weekly maintenance. We're getting ready to take on the IAAM grounds in Fountain. It is a huge Class A detailed park space with a fountain like you've never seen before. We have the Danny Allen Rec Center, Police Department Forensic Center, Waring Senior Center, municipal golf course enhancements, Carr Richardson Park and Event Building, which will be coming open soon, the Tech Center Garage, the West Edge Parking Garage, the Visitor Center renovation, the Alma Dungy Community Center renovation, Dimitri Park full renovation resulting that was damaged from 3 hurricanes, Susie Jackson Freedom Memorial Garden and Fountain, Corinne Jones Community Garden, all of the FEMA parcel maintenance projects, numerous playground equipment renovations, Mulberry Park partial renovation. We've got another phase or 2 to get done. We just haven't been able to pull the trigger on that yet. A new park over on Smith Street, Shiloh Park with a fountain. The Trolley Barn parking lot was added to our portfolio, Stony Field renovation, and all of the new requirements that it's going to take care of a synthetic turf and a synthetic track. I will have to say that Lori saying that special events can happen there is not going to be an easy thing. We really need to protect that investment. Any use outside of traditional recreation programs on Stony Field is going to require a very robust protection program that is going to cost somebody a lot of money to make that happen, because we can't just go drive vehicles on it. We can't stake tents on it, but it's a wonderful resource that we need to protect. Park shore hardscape and landscape enhancements. It's additional maintenance on that kind of stuff. Completed West Ashley Bikeway resurfacing phase 1. Tennis and basketball resurfacing all the time. We've renovated almost 9.5 acres of painting projects in the past 5 years out of 83 hard courts that we serve. St. Julian Divine facilities and park enhancements. We just renovated that entire facility. When you do those things, you got to keep up with it, right? Smokestack stabilization with more work to come. City Gallery building envelope repairs. We've got a new park on Daniel Allen, Fallen Tree Park. We've installed an irrigation system out at Stanley Chisholm. Got a Portland Loo at Ferguson Village. We renovated Mary Watson Park. We've renovated one quadrant of Hampstead Square, getting ready to do the next one here coming soon. Completely renovated Moultrie Park and playground. Additional maintenance requirements for the battery project, just daily leaf collection, litter patrol, and flower plantings. We've got Clements Ferry Road landscape enhancements. That's a lot of work to keep an eye up on those medians on Clements Ferry Road and make sure that they look just as good as any place else in the city. We have new field lights at Governor's Park, Riley Field, Bayview, and Stony. With new lights comes additional use and requires additional maintenance to keep our grass green. In 2018, we hired someone just to do focus on public safety facilities. We've renovated Fire Station 6. Fire Station 7 is out for bid. We've renovated Fire Station 12. We got Fire Station 10 for a 2023 request. Fire Station 11 complete. Fire Station 13 complete. Fire Station 14 new construction. Fire Station 16 complete. Fire Station 18, we've got a request for professional services to redesign that for the fire department. Fire Station 17, 2023 request again. Fire Station 19, drawings complete. That project's out for bid. We've done work in over probably 12 or 13 park houses across the city. So that's a partial list of 5 years of work. That doesn't include the 5 years prior. So now I'm going to get back to my list unless anybody has a comment or a question. Let me share this screen. I know this is a lot.
You think you need a little more maintenance money, Jason?
Well, that's what I'm setting up.
Jason, that sounds like a closing argument at the end of a trial.
Well, Judge Herdina did accuse me of practicing law without a license one time. So I just wanted that jumps me back right into our budget request. A lot of these requests are requests to get us back to that pre-pandemic 2019 budget levels, like Lori had in a lot of her requests. Inflation, all of the above, all of the materials that we use on a daily basis. We've asked for an increase in each line item. You can see here, all of these are supplies, and you go through the list. Agricultural supplies, that's the fertilizer to keep our grass growing and robust. With all of the extra use, we got to have more fertilizer. And guess what? With the issue over in Ukraine and Russia right now, all of the raw material for fertilizer comes from Ukraine. Fertilizer, I'm hearing 400% increase in cost. So it's not cheap just to buy the fertilizer. Painting materials, construction materials, general maintenance numbers, plumbing and electrical supplies, painting and marking supplies, that's for our athletic fields, equipment repairs, back to the oils and mower parts, blower parts, you name it. Everything is costing more money now. Fountain maintenance, parts and supplies and pumps, same thing. It all costs more money now. Janitorial supplies, dock maintenance, painting and marking, small hand tools, janitorial supplies, gas, oil, lubricants. And again, back another one, overtime. So that's all the materials that we're asking for to increase due to inflation and the cost of materials. It's a matter of fact. We have a lot of territory to cover with over 120 parks and 4.5 million square feet of building space. Along with that, what I didn't cover up here, we have 14 new staff positions we're requesting. We're still 30% down. We were very conservative over the past 2 or 3 years in asking for anything, knowing that what our COVID budget was. Well, knowing that we still have the open positions, we still have to ask for these positions. We're asking for trash crews, which was a recommendation out of the Novak plan a while ago, is to designate a trash crew for the peninsula and designate a trash crew for off peninsula, and they will focus on trash in our parks, so our grounds crews can focus on cutting the grass, pruning the shrubbery, and taking care of the small things that happen on a day-to-day basis. New QATs, QAT is a quality assurance tech. They're a little bit higher paid maintenance person that has a little bit better eye for detail and can identify problems and get the work done. Juvenile pruning crew, you've all heard me talk about urban forestry. We have one urban forestry crew right now for the entire city. We probably have over 80,000 trees in the city. We're planting trees every day in all of the new subdivisions that are being constructed. All of those young trees, we can alleviate or eliminate future maintenance if we have a juvenile tree pruning crew that goes around, knows what they're doing, and can correct issues before they happen. So you look at crossing limbs and bad crotches and trunk structures. You can fix a lot of that when that tree is very young and eliminate the future maintenance requirements 20, 30 years down the road. We should be doing it. It's a request that we have. Again, with all of these requests, it's really hard to prioritize. So how we've done it is, of course, pay. We went through our staffing requests, our supplies requests, again, I'll keep going unless anybody has any questions. Resurrecting again our funding for tree pruning. We have Waterfront Park, White Point Garden, Hampton Park. These are the kind of our iconic parks that we haven't pruned trees in over 3 years. They need a good pruning cycle, which will make them more resilient to storm winds and will just invigorate their ability to grow. So I know that on my next line item here is this playground maintenance. The playground maintenance line item for a couple of years that prior to COVID, we were able to replace 1 or 2 full playground equipments around the city. Some of these were 20, 30 years old. We'd like to get that funding back up to the 250 that we had prior to COVID. It really helps these small neighborhood parks, and it really affects the people that live there when you put a shiny new playground in there and people really feel good about it. The next thing in the list up there on page 2, 4th one down, the Charleston Parks Conservancy, we have a request to increase their annual compensation to $250,000. The Charleston Parks Conservancy does a wonderful volume of work throughout the parks. They program, they engage, they activate, they have community gardens, they provide a wonderful service to the citizens, and they help us in taking care of these elevated park styles. We have another request of $40,000 annually that we worked with the mayor about, both of these with the mayor. The Charleston Parks Conservancy came in and talked to the mayor about their request for funding. The Clemson program that's done work over on the Bikeway, Corinne Jones Community Garden, Ardmore Park, Medway Park. Where's our third community garden?
W.L. Stevens.
It's right. It's a student-led program. They come in, they provide a wonderful community benefit. They get lots of experience. It's the landscape architecture and architecture students. They come in, they design a project, and they actually build it. And the only cost to the city is the cost of materials, which we're finding out being about $20,000 to $30,000 to $40,000 a pop. Free labor. It's a wonderful benefit. The students get out there and learn how to work with the community, and then they learn how to actually build something. So we're asking for that to be funded annually, so we don't have to continually to come back and ask for these good cost-saving projects. We've got repairs that we need to do to the Vendu fountain down at Waterfront Park, the Pineapple Fountain. The infrastructure in those systems are so old that the pipes that connect the pumps to the vaults to the actual fountain itself, they're failing. So we have to re-sleeve them. We have to get specialty contractors in there to do that work. Continuing on down the line, Market Hall window glazing and paint, Dock Street Theater window glazing and paint. Again, back to some of those fire station renovation projects. We got a request to do some painting over at Greenberg Municipal Center. Our Brittlebank Park pier is the roof on that pier structure needs to be replaced. Gadsden Borough Park swing structures. You may have heard through constituent letters and communication that we've taken the swings down out there at that park because each one of them they're rotten and they're unsafe, and it's a big ticket item to get replaced. It's about $130,000 we estimate, because it's not something that we can do in-house. They're very detailed designed, and we have to get a contractor there to do that work. We got requests from the police department to do some headquarter renovations. You're looking at painting, carpeting, desks, lobbies, all of that stuff we've been doing in a lot of the fire stations is just quality of life things for our employees that use those facilities. The Brigade Street warehouses, we got a lot of requests to do work in there from the police department. Coming back around to urban forestry and our street tree. We don't have a comprehensive street tree inventory. We need that from liability points of view, and it helps us with the management of our urban forests, which, when you come to our new neighborhoods with all the trees and our more senior neighborhoods, if you will, the trees really make these places a lot of times. Imagine the places without trees. We just need the ability to know what we have, where we have them, and then also that plan would tell us what we really need to manage and maintain that urban forest. Right now, We have one crew. We have 3 open crew leaders, a bunch of other openings. Back to contract pruning. So we haven't pruned trees, palm trees downtown West Ashley or Daniel Island for the past 3 years. So we were fortunate enough to get the ARPA funding. So we are currently pruning trees on the lower peninsula, upper peninsula, and Daniel Island, the palm trees, that is. You know, they drop fronds, they drop berries, they're a nuisance, they're a safety issue. And, you know, due to the cuts from COVID, all of those professional services got whittled down to the bare minimum. So we need to reestablish those budgets. Safety crew signage. We're always getting asked to do landscape renovation projects. We've had a wonderful experience over on the east side, Hampstead Square. Go down there, experience that park. It is incredible. We did all of that internal design service with Charleston Parks Conservancy, and we all built it together with the neighborhood. It was an incredible project. It looks wonderful. We would like to do those things elsewhere. Ferguson Village, Rag Square, Rag Mall Extension, Washington Square. We have lots of parks everywhere that were built 20 or 30 years ago, and that was it. So we just need a way to keep constantly reinvigorating those public spaces. Additional supplies for Keep Charleston Beautiful program. You know, we have a wonderful volunteer base that Jamie Gillette gets out there, and they just did a lot of work out on the bikeway yesterday. And all of that stuff costs money. We like to get those folks out there with safety equipment and the right equipment to clean up the litter. So they do a wonderful job. Plant replacements throughout the city, whether it's gateways or parks. We just need a little bit of money to actually buy those plants. We need some spare trucks. When our trucks break, we don't have spare trucks, and it really affects the way we do business. We need new chip truck and chipper for our forestry crews. And we need a little storage building out at Stony Field to store the new gator and broom equipment that we have out there to take care of that part. Again, back to the third page. These are, again, at the end of the list, more overtime increases across facilities and grounds maintenance. With our climate action plan, we have an electric blower requirement that we get rid of our gas powered blowers by the middle of next year. We anticipate that's $110,000 cost. We have to upgrade our electrical systems to add the charging systems and the multiple battery packs. It's going to be a different way of doing business, but it takes the infrastructure to provide that service. I do fear that right now we've got a couple of electric equipment, but we can't get the batteries. So if it's funded, it'll be interesting to see if we can actually get the batteries for the equipment. And then back to the tennis center stuff. Charleston Tennis Center lighting, Maybank Tennis Center lighting, James Island Rec Center pool shade structure. This isn't a full-time pool covering. This was a shade structure that was requested by the council member Parker over there. And we've heard from the public that the decking around that pool is very tight and it gets very hot. So we'd like to move the fence out a little bit and create a little shade garden for the people that use that pool. And then another request from our recreation department, another internal client, is the third floor flooring at St. Julian Divine so they can adapt that space and to use it for a dance floor. So that was a lot of words and a lot of talk. Happy to take any of your questions to see how I can help. Councilmember Kane.
Thank you. If you can go back to the previous page, Jason. So the CPD Brigade warehouse, what is our lease on that? Do you know how much time is left on that lease?
I have to see if Matt Froelich or Lee Bailey had that answer.
And are we responsible for the full $200,000 of that proposed?
That is a request from the police department to do some renovations in that space so that it's a little bit more suitable for how they're using it.
I'm just wondering, there was some conversation about that space, and I remember when we were at the forensic facility building off of Beast Ferry, Chief Reynolds had talked about this facility, and I thought we were looking for a new home. Am I inaccurate on that?
Yeah, that is correct, Councilman. I think our lease, though, I think we have another 7 to 8 years on that lease.
That's right, because we have to give a 10-year notice, Councilmember Shade. So we still have a good long while in that facility. And so what that is just a request from the police department, but because it's a warehouse and they're trying to utilize it for things that are not warehouse-like, and that's probably not something that we would fund anyway, because we're leasing that space and it's really not, we can't really do the improvements that they want us to do.
Amy, you broke up a little bit between what you and Rick were saying. So we have to give how many days, months notice for termination?
We've given notice. We have to give notice, and but then once we give notice, there's another 10 years on that lease life, and we gave notice a couple of years ago.
So even though we've given notice, we've got like 8 years left on the lease. Is that what you're telling us?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. And Jason, the other question to the next page on those lightings, I'm presuming that we're getting state-of-the-art lighting for those tennis centers?
Yes, sir. We already have proposals from Super Green, and that they're all LED remote controlled sports court lighting.
Because I suspect part of the expense of lighting is when you have to replace burnt out bulbs, the old fashioned kind of burnt out bulbs, but it takes manpower and time to do that. So I'm presuming these are going to cost on maintenance as well.
Yeah, they and Wes, you can jump in there. They come with a pretty robust warranty system, but the LED lights, you don't have to replace them. They don't have as much issues as some of the old school lights that we have out there. We can't even get parts for them. We used to try to get parts for them on eBay. It was kind of they don't make them anymore. You might find a pile of them somewhere, junk somewhere, but it's what we have to do. Kind of like the golf course before we renovated the golf course irrigation system. They were buying irrigation heads and irrigation parts off of eBay. So we kind of fixed that.
I know that one of the issues that some folks I talked to about the tennis center is that if they want to have tournaments out there, that was hampering them. So I guess this is going to help enhance all of that competition and availability as well.
All of the vendors put together proposals with all of the foot candle values and should satisfy any of the tournament and recreation sport lighting requirements.
And
Very good. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Waring has his hand up, followed by Councilmember Appel.
Thank you. Mr. Crosby, could you kind of drill down a little bit more on the personnel pieces? You say you're down 30%, but what does that mean in terms of numbers? In any one department you find being hit harder than others?
Right now, grounds maintenance makes up about 20 to 23 of the I think it's like 47 openings out of 151. So it's grounds maintenance, facilities maintenance. We've had a plumber and an HVAC tech position open for 3 years.
And the average pay rate for the maintenance people, if you ballpark it, what is it? I mean, we advertising for what? And how many bites we get?
I know the HR has that information. It's, like for the forestry staff, I think they used that. It was 25 or 3,500 hits, 8 applicants.
I mean, at what hourly rate,
It varies. I mean, the forestry guys, I don't have that at the tip of my head.
Okay. All right.
The facility information, it's basically like 23, 58 an hour to 25 is the range that everything is advertised at. So that's for like the plumbing, the HVAC, the pump techs, on the facility side.
And we've been advertising how long?
For over 3 years.
Oh, shit. So when we going to adjust the pay scale. Obviously, for almost 3 years, we can't find, it's too low. I mean, does that make sense?
We've got 2 plumbers right now. One of them is 71. He's getting ready to retire.
Thank you.
And then real quick on that cedar tree, and if you remember the tree we used to put in Avondale, the proximity to the power lines are an issue. Dominion told us we couldn't put the tree back in Avondale, but we'll look again and see if we can get in there to the cedar tree. It just costs money. It'll all have to be redone.
I'm just telling you, I mean, I got to be a couple of thousand people that living around those East Oak Forest, West Oak Forest, Old Oak Forest. You'd be surprised the kick they get at the adults get out of.
Yeah,
it's been up for years, and anyway.
Yeah,
we'll talk about it.
Yeah, there's the proximity to the power lines. Now that tree's gotten bigger, you have to get a bigger lift in there, and we got OSHA requirements, and we just want to make sure we're safe.
All right. Okay. Thank you. If there's another alternative, thanks.
And Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Appel has his hand up.
Sure. It's been pretty open. Councilmember Appel.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor and Jason. Thank you for that presentation. And I think it goes without saying that we've got a big, sprawling city with a lot of needs, and we don't have sufficient resources, it appears, to get everything that we want done. To state the obvious, I would just like to point out, and I've had several conversations with everybody about Act 236 that the legislature passed this June. Essentially what it does is it broadens local government's authority to impose fees. And specifically, it allows fees that do not provide specific individualized benefits to payors. The public can receive benefits more broadly in exchange for the fee. So we could create a City of Charleston beautification fee that folks, residences, or businesses pay. Well, it doesn't have to necessarily be a lot. It could be $10, it could be $50 for businesses, whatever the case may be. It's just another option and tool in our toolkit that we can use to help fund things like some of these tree crews, things like keeping the gateways to West Ashley, looking nice, things of that nature. We could even, if you want to get real crazy with it, you could even set up different fees for different regions of the city. Like you have a West Ashley beautification fee, Johns Island, etc. The fees can be kept in separate accounts and only used in those individual areas. I mean, we need to get creative with the way we can generate resources. And I think that if folks understood that there was a direct, tangible connection between what they were paying and what they were getting it, and they were seeing it every day, that could be a potential winner. So that's much broader discussion than we got time for today. I just thought I'd sort of make that note here for everybody as we continue to try to find ways to fund what we need to fund to do what we want to do in the city. Thanks.
Any other questions? I know that was a lot of talk on my part.
A lot going on.
Yeah,
It was impressive, frankly.
I'll tell you that we have a wonderful team over here. We have a lot of dedicated, longtime employees, and so that our first priority would go a long way, and hopefully it'll help us with retention and recruiting.
Got to get you some more team members.
Thank you, Jason and Edmund, Wes, for all y'all do. It's remarkable inventory of assets and parks that we have and our citizens love, and we keep adding to it, as you note. So I know it's a ongoing huge job. Thanks for what y'all do.
Jason, did you want to go over just the couple of ballpark things
We can. If
you want me to share?
Yeah, so it kind of caught me a little off guard last night with the question. It would be if you want me to kind of go through some of the ballpark stuff, the Joe Raleigh ballpark, it's not just locker rooms and gender issues. There's lots of things that Major League Baseball has required. I'm happy just to go through that stuff with you. I prepared a little bit of an outline. I can either share it's just a real quick email that I shared with Amy today. I think it would help you understand the scope of the work.
I was just talking about the 2 requests in the budget that I just put up on the screen, but I mean, that's a good point. That's a good point as well, Jason.
Sorry about that. Which part? I'm sorry.
So it was just a little bit of overtime and then just the replacement of another section of seats at the ballpark. That was really all there was. I don't know if Wes has any other comments about that or not.
Yeah, Wes, you can jump in here. The overtime, when they play
we get
baseball,
lots.
we have to have staff there.
Yeah, I mean, we get lots of call outs for one thing or another over at the ballpark, and then the seat replacement. That was just a program that we've always done that we've stopped over the past couple of years that we just need to get back to.
So if you made it to the ballpark, you'll see there's the faded out seats and the new seats. So like Wes said, we've been kind of doing sections at a time annually, and they just get UV eats them up, they get brittle, discolored, and they need to be replaced.
So really, those were the only 2 requests. It has nothing to do with this current MLB upgrades that they're asking for. It just that we're still working on. Any other questions?
Councilmember Shea.
Thank you, Mayor. So on the golf course, I don't see anything in here about the bathrooms.
So we just went over the golf course with Lori, and those wouldn't be in here, Councilmember Shea. One, we haven't vetted the whole entire thing, and they wouldn't be in their operational budget. That's going to be a separate line item.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, just to help y'all understand, we do a lot of maintenance type renovation work in our maintenance budgets, and then there's projects that we kind of define as capital projects that either get through the capital plan or, like Amy said, funded through reserve.
I didn't know how that was going to fall into renovation or a new capital project. So I guess replacing a porta potty would not be a renovation project. It'd be a new capital project.
I don't think so.
No, and so we discussed coming back in October with a capital improvement plan again. So we can talk about that then.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. How are we doing?
So I think Jason went through that fast and got us back on time. So
Jason wore me out, quite frankly, Mayor.
I wore myself out.
okay, so then we have the fire department next. Councilmember Shade, if you thought you got worn out before.
So that idea of drinking out of a fire hose is now coming.
I'll let Chief Curry talk to you about that. I'm going to share my screen for him.
How you doing?
How is everybody today?
Doing well. Well,
good. Good. I told Amy that every time I try to share my screen, something happens, and I'm sure it's user error. It's on my part, but she's being kind enough to share the screen for us.
Can you all see that okay?
That's much better.
Okay. So I think you're good, Chief.
Thank you, Amy. As I start today, I mean, we have 30 requests from the fire department, and it was from a list of probably 108 requests that were submitted within the department. But this will be my 3rd or 4th budget presentation to the city, and something that always strikes me is the amount of high quality work that BFRC does. Amy and her team, pretty phenomenal. Obviously, you just heard Jason, and the way Jason and his team prioritize the fire department and the facilities, to keep our firefighters as safe and as comfortable as possible is pretty great. You'll see a couple of requests in our presentation that intersect with the police department, and obviously Chief Reynolds and his team are important partners with us. And then I think at the beginning of Jason Kronsberg's presentation, he said the highest priority is pay and retention. And I would agree with that. And in order to make that work, K-Cross is a pretty important partner for all of us. So I just, in a world where we tend to point out the negative, I just wanted to make sure that we said a couple of positive things to start the conversation. So in the 30 requests that we made, the number one request for the fire department is to obtain the staffing to put a new ladder company in service on Johns Island. So that's the very first request. It's 15 positions. It's a little over $1 million. Would remind everybody that we did submit a grant application with the federal government. It's called a SAFER grant. And if we get that grant, the federal government will pick up 100% of the cost of these firefighters for 3 years. And then there has to be a commitment from the city to keep the staffing on for another 2 years. But obviously, if we put the ladder company in service, the thought would be that this would be something that would go on forever. The cost is $1 million, but what I would also say is as we look at the staffing in the fire department and we plan out when the fire recruit academies will start in fiscal 23, we have one academy that will start in February, and it'll be a shorter academy that we hire previously trained firefighters. But then we'll have the longer traditional academy that will start in July. So I believe if we move forward with the firefighters for this new ladder company, we could go ahead and count on a July start, which would of course cut the cost in half for the year, at least for salary. And the importance of this unit is it would enhance fire protection on Johns Island. For every fire that we get dispatched to, we dispatch at least 2 ladder companies to handle different things on the fire scene. So currently with our auto aid agreement, one ladder company comes from Johns Island or St. John's Fire, and the second ladder company comes from Station 10, which is in the Avondale section of West Ashley. So placing a ladder company on Johns Island itself would greatly enhance our ability to protect all those neighborhoods. And if you've gone over to Johns Island lately, you see the explosive growth that is occurring in those neighborhoods. Another reason that this would be important to us is that the long range planning for St. John's Fire calls for them to shift their fire protection more towards the Kiowa area. And while I don't have a timeline for that, I do know that those things are on the drawing board for that fire department. So it's going to be important for us to go ahead and plan for increased protection from the city perspective and get it there prior to the shift from St. John's. The second request from the fire department is to add a mechanic, and our intent is to address the growing number of apparatus and smaller vehicles that we have in the department. So currently we have 24 engines and 6 ladders and aerials and a whole host of other vehicles. But if you look at the list, you'll see we probably have about 100 passenger vehicles that operate throughout the department. So to handle that load, we have 3 mechanics. We can see every month we track the number of repairs that we do to our apparatus. We track the number of routine maintenance items that we address in the shop. And what we have found is if we could add 1 more mechanic and give that mechanic the capability to be mobile, then we could handle the smaller repairs in the city without bringing those fire apparatus to Milford Street, which then it cuts down on the mileage and the wear and tear on the apparatus. But more importantly for the fire department, it keeps our units in their own district, which then enhances our fire protection. The third thing on our list is related to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. So obviously there was a long presentation at the Public Safety Committee a couple of weeks ago, and it related to staffing and retention. But all the conversations that we've been having at public safety or with council over the last 18 months to 24 months has had some type of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging component. So the fire department has tried a whole host of different strategies to increase the diversity of the department. And just as a reminder, the department is 92% white male. And obviously I want the fire department to reflect the community we serve. If we can do that, we're going to provide better protection to that community because we're going to make deeper connections with them as we're providing service. So far, the different strategies that we have tried have not increased the diversity of the department. So we are making a request of $75,000 to bring in a consultant to look at what we're doing, look at the approaches that we've already taken, and help us devise approaches for the future so that in the next several years, we can see that diversity in the department increase. Related to that, but somewhat different, is a request for leadership training in the fire department. So I've been here just a little over 4 years. And in the time that I've been here, we have 25 chief officers in the department, and 67% of those chief officers have been put in place since I've been here. So a lot of the issues that we find in the department that don't have a clear-cut answer to them, we find that we're handicapped just through inexperience. So the thought is to bring leadership training into the department, bring it from an outside perspective so that we can help shape our culture and help shape our decision-making to what it needs to be. Related to diversity, equity, and inclusion, there's a request to restore 2 firefighter positions. And what we did to increase our recruitment efforts and our diversity efforts was we combined 2 vacant firefighter positions. And with that combination, that's how we created the recruiter and the diversity position in the department. So as we approach full staffing in the fire department, and just as an aside, we just put a fire academy in. We have 14 people in the current fire academy, but with those 14 people, our operational vacancies are at 19. So we are constantly chipping away at that vacancy number. As we approach full staffing, it's important to return those firefighter positions back to the operations division so we can allocate them to fire apparatus. We have a communications FTE requested, and what we find is in the fire department, we have so many portable radios, we have so many mobile data computers, we have software that is dedicated solely to the fire department to track firefighters inside burning buildings. And the lift to program those radios, the lift to update those mobile data computers and to make sure that the software is acting and functioning as it should is more than we can handle without some assistance. So we have a request in for that. When we made the presentation at the Public Safety Committee a couple of weeks ago related to staffing and retention, pay and retention, one of the things I was saying is I only have the capacity in the training division to train 26 to 30 firefighters at one time, new firefighters. And in 2018, our vacancy rate or our vacancy number got up to 79 positions. So we've been chipping away at that very, very steadily. But what it has done to the training division of the fire department is it's put that group of individuals into a constant cycle of new recruit training. And that has been at the sacrifice of maintaining current skill sets for our incumbent firefighters. So I'd like to add 4 additional staff instructor positions into the training division, which will then enable us to train new firefighters and incumbent firefighters concurrently. The next request is for a medical operations officer. We should surpass 24,000 calls this year in the fire department. And of those 24,000 calls, probably 13 to 14,000 of them will be medical in nature. The way we've been approaching the medical component of the fire department is just to piecemeal things together and to try to get training and try to get equipment and resources by taking from different line items or taking people out of the operations division and assigning them to a medical component. So I'd like to go ahead and add a medical operations officer that will coordinate the medical program for the fire department, will coordinate the recertifications that we need for our firefighters to be emergency medical technicians, coordinate the ordering of the specialized equipment that we'll need to keep delivering medical service. We also have a request to replace carbon monoxide alarms for the fire marshal's division. Obviously, carbon monoxide is colorless, odorless, and tasteless. So as our fire marshals are going into different businesses, if there's a gas leak in a restaurant, say on the peninsula, we're not going to know that necessarily without having some type of detection system in place. So we already have carbon monoxide alarms for staff. We just need to go ahead and replace those. The ones that we're currently using have a 3-year shelf life. We'd like to go ahead and buy replacements that have 5-year shelf lives. The next one is related to the special operations of the fire department. I've said before in the public safety meetings, we have a whole host of special operations companies in the fire department. We deliver hazardous materials mitigation to the city. We have urban search and rescue, collapse. We have a marine division. We have swift water. We have a whole host of teams. But in order to staff those teams, I need to be able to incentivize our firefighters to do something extra for the department. So an approach that was taken previously, and this was well before my time in the fire department, was that personnel who took on the extra duties of special operations would get a 5% incentive to take on that duty, because it does require extra training, and that extra training is off duty, but it also requires a huge time commitment. Over time, that 5% incentive was removed with the thought process that personnel could make up the money just through overtime as they trained, say, in hazardous materials. And what we found, especially going through the pandemic, is that we didn't have the money to operate with that model. We simply did not have the overtime money. So what I would like to do is I'd like to go ahead and return a static monetary incentive to those assigned to the special operations division, so we can go ahead and build up that capacity back in the fire department. The next item on the list is related to, let me make sure I got my list in front of me. It's related to accommodations. So obviously, with all the discussions that have gone on with accommodations and late night ordinance, that type of thing, there's an increased requirement on the fire marshal's division in the fire department to make sure that we're out and we're in these businesses and we're inspecting them. And our approach all the time is to educate, over, enforce. What we've been doing is we've been taking the existing fire marshal staff and we've been having them work overtime in evenings and on the weekends, and then working these responsibilities in as we could. What we'd like to do is we'd like to go ahead and add a couple of positions to make sure that we're focusing on these items on a pretty consistent basis. And this may be one of those items that could be partially or fully funded through the accommodations tax. And Amy, I think I'd have to rely on you to weigh in on that.
So yes, we could fund some of that with hospitality fees.
Thanks. The next thing on our list is just really, when you think about a firehouse, there is a huge component of the firehouse that it's like a restaurant or a home. We obviously have a kitchen in each facility, and we need to make sure that the hood systems in those kitchens get inspected annually. So we're requesting funding for that. When you see TIMS, that is basically it's active shooter. It's how we partner with the police department to make sure that police and fire are operating very proactively in active shooter incidents. So this request is a one-time request of $6,000 to make sure that we have the equipment and the training that we need to continue. That's one of those special teams that we've got. Next is a request, again, for another incentive for those personnel in the fire department who are taking on extra duty for us. So we do have dedicated training staff. And again, I've said the dedicated training staff spends the majority of their time training new firefighters. To add to those, that group of training personnel, one of the things that we would like to do is to give them a 5% incentive to make sure that as people are coming out of the operations division and going to the training division, they're changing their schedule from 24-hour shifts to 8-hour days. We'd like to incentivize that in order to keep those positions internal to the Charleston Fire Department. Excuse me. The next thing on the list, and you'll see it's a pretty big price tag, but this is something that I've requested every year since I've been in Charleston, and it's to establish a dedicated community risk reduction group in the Fire Marshal Division. This would entail 8 positions that are dedicated to creating a safer Charleston. So, as a bit of an aside, currently in the fire department, we are having extensive conversations about why are we here? What are we supposed to be doing for the residents and the visitors of Charleston? And how do we best accomplish those things? So what we've settled on is our mission in the fire department is to create a safer Charleston. No more, no less. But to think that creating a safer Charleston is contained solely to the fire engine responding to a call and us taking care of somebody's emergency would be pretty short-sighted. What we don't find is that there's a proactive, sustained presence in the community. What we want to do is we want to identify, prevent, and solve problems for the community before they've even identified them for themselves. We want to provide proactive training on hands-only CPR, for example. We want to make sure that the community is trained on the dangers of cooking fires. We want to make sure people can use fire extinguishers. We want to make sure that we can be back in the schools teaching things like stop, drop, and roll. You know, if you think about when probably all of us were in school, having the fire department come in was a pretty regular thing. But over time, things in the fire service in general have shifted. We don't have a sustained presence in the schools. We have focused time in the schools, typically during October when it's fire prevention month. But what we would like to do is we would like to go ahead and partner with the schools, partner with the community to make sure that every single day we are out making the community a safer place to be. The next request is it's a annual service for something called a plum event. And in a firehouse, there's a big yellow tube that attaches to the fire truck to make sure our firefighters don't breathe in diesel exhaust. So it detaches from the apparatus automatically when they get a call. When we back into the firehouse, we attach that tube manually. We just need money for the annual inspection program. The next item is it's called bailout train the trainer. One of the things that we have to do is we have to provide our firefighters a small rope, a hook, and a descending device, so that if they get caught in a burning building and say they're on the 3rd floor of the building, they have the ability to use this rope to get out the window and to get to the ground before anything really bad happens. In order to do that, we've got to make sure that we maintain our certifications, and we can still train and teach our firefighters that skill set. So in order to do that, we have to send our training group back for continuing education. So this would be to make sure that they are current in the training. Next down is a request for additional mobile data computers that we use in the fire apparatus. This would enable us to go ahead and put this equipment in the reserve apparatus that we've got, so that when apparatus breaks down, we have equipment to train. We don't even have to transfer the equipment. We have equipment ready in the reserve apparatus. But it becomes especially important when we have a hurricane or another natural disaster bearing down on us, and we have to stand up units in the fire department. The mobile data computers are how we receive calls from the dispatch center. It's how we receive our routing instructions. It's how we receive information about the calls to say it's a confirmed fire or it's a confirmed auto accident with somebody trapped in the vehicle, that type of thing. The next request, this is one we actually may be able to accomplish in the current budget year, but it's just adding money so that our honor guard members can get new uniforms. Has to happen every couple of years, and we spend so much money in firefighting gear that we often overlook these smaller things. The next one down is a request for funding for our marine units. We have 2 boats. One of those you voted on funding last night to repair the larger of the 2 boats, but we also have a smaller one, and we don't have any money dedicated specifically to maintaining our marine assets. That $185,000 you see is for vehicle maintenance in general in the fire department. So we'd like to have $50,000 dedicated just to the marine units so that we can make sure all the preventative maintenance is done, and hopefully we can avoid these big ticket repairs like we experienced and that came before you last night for funding. The next thing is an SCBA compressor. And obviously when you see firefighters, we have those air tanks on our backs. Those air tanks are rated at 45 minutes of air, but in order to get 45 minutes of air, you have to compress it down. So the equipment that we are going to in October is going to require us to compress the air at 5,500 PSI. What we'd like to do is we'd like to add a compressor and put it at Station 7 on James Island. And what that will do is, as our firefighters are using the air on different calls, if it's a structure fire, if it's a vehicle fire, it will lessen our downtime to fill those bottles up and get us back in service. So we have one dedicated air unit that can be mobile and go around and fill those bottles. And then we also have compressors strategically placed throughout the city. We don't have one on James Island, so we'd like to go ahead and add that. The next request goes back to diversity, equity, and inclusion. We know that this is a heavy lift for us. We know that we're not equipped necessarily to handle this on our own. That goes back to the request for a consultant to come in and partner with us so we can create a better Charleston Fire Department. We also know that the people we have tasked as leading the effort with diversity, equity, and inclusion are going to require specialized training. So we do have a request into earmark funding specifically for diversity training. Getting to the last couple of requests, again, you see TEMS, that's the active shooter type special team in the fire department. And we need to go ahead and purchase them additional different radio equipment so they can function and interface with the police department a little better. The next request is a pretty significant increase to our travel and training budget. And what we find is that the Charleston Fire Department is a special group of people. The whole team really is. But we also find that we have got to get outside the Charleston Fire Department. If we want to keep pushing this fire department forward, if we want to maintain our cutting edge reputation, not even related to just firefighting, but if we want to be a leader in community risk reduction, and if we want to be a leader in code enforcement, we've got to do something outside the Charleston Fire Department. So with a group of 400 people in the department, we would like to bump up that training budget so we can send people outside Charleston, have them come back and inform the larger team about what is going on in the fire service in general. You see another request for an FTE. This is for logistics. Obviously, with a team of 400 people, with 17 firehouses, with a separate location for the fire marshals, a separate location for training, a separate location for the logistics function, there's a lot of moving pieces in order to just keep the firehouses running. I mean, just trying to transport medical equipment and toiletries and paper towels out to the firehouses is a full-time job. So we've got one person dedicated to pulling supplies for the department, but what we would like to do is we'd like to add another position so we can get those supplies out to the firehouses in a more efficient manner. The next request is a maintenance issue. It's just preventative maintenance for all the overhead doors and the bifold doors that we've got in the firehouses. Obviously, if we can engage in preventative maintenance, it's going to lessen how often these doors break. When these doors break, it becomes an operational issue for us. It reduces our response times, or I'm sorry, it increases our response times. It reduces our effectiveness. And sometimes we actually have to shuffle units around to try to keep coverage in place just because we can't get doors open. The next is another request for preventative maintenance funding. Each of our firehouses has an emergency generator, and in order to keep those generators operating and to extend their life, we obviously need to engage in preventative maintenance. So the request for $12,000 is to have annual maintenance for those generators. The next request goes back to TEMS. It goes back to that active shooter, and it's for the actual batteries and radios that we're going to need in addition to the other communications equipment to dedicate to the team to make sure that they can interface with the police department. The next request is related to fire investigations. We'd like to go ahead and purchase a trailer and equip that trailer with investigation equipment. It'll aid the fire marshal's division as they try to determine cause and origin. I'll point us back to the Palms fire that we had several months ago. Obviously, the scope of that fire is unusual for us. We don't typically have a fire that large. But if anybody saw the pictures of that fire, when you see the destruction that's left, that destruction is not uncommon, even if it's a fire in a house and one room is destroyed. So having all the equipment in one place to be able to pull to the scene would be a huge benefit for the fire marshal's division. And the last request we've got is $50,000, and it's for particulate resistant flash hoods. firefighters, when they put their masks on with those air tanks, they have to pull up a hood, and the hood is designed to protect their neck and their ears from getting burned. But what we find is that firefighters, studies are showing that the rates of cancer, of certain types of cancer in firefighters, are incredibly high, much higher than the general population. And one of the areas that studies are focusing on is this neck and head area. So with these different hoods, it would block the smoke out from getting around this area of a firefighter. Currently, the hoods that we currently use are porous, and the smoke is going to get through them, and it's going to get to our firefighters' skin, but it's going to block some of the heat. These new hoods would block the heat in addition to the smoke, creating a safer environment. In an unsafe work situation, it creates a safer environment for our firefighters. And that's it.
That's all?
That's it. I told you I cut it down from 108, right?
Wow. That's a lot to digest. Thank you, Chief, for presenting that. Any questions from anyone?
Chief, thank you very much. Just wanted to add on the positions you were talking about, the community risk reduction and the logistics person, those that you're talking about, those positions, those would need to be fully sworn, fully trained firefighters to do those positions?
Not necessarily. The logistics position would be a civilian position, so no advanced firefighter training whatsoever. The community risk reduction positions, I think we could design them either way. If we wanted them to have code enforcement responsibilities in addition to community risk, then they would need to be trained as firefighters. However, if we wanted to not have code enforcement, if we just wanted them to focus on creating a safer community for us, there's nothing that says we couldn't bring in school teachers who maybe just want a change of career. We could bring in retired school teachers, and then they wouldn't need to have firefighter training. They would obviously need to have a familiarity with what we do and why we do it, but they wouldn't necessarily need to have the certifications.
Yeah, I was just thinking under our situation, we need to have as many of our trained sworn officers doing what they're trained to do if we can use somebody else, for those positions, it just seems like. So.
Absolutely. I think really having somebody who's got a background in education is probably the route that would be most beneficial to us. They'd be able to engage with different age groups, and as long as we provided them the curriculum, so to speak, they can teach it for us.
Great. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right. Anybody else? Well, you got us at the end of the meeting, Chief, so it's only been a few hours, so we're probably getting an earful here. But thank you for the presentation, and for everybody else. The other presenters are already gone, but I think the requests have been very thoughtful and have tried to be focused on the priorities and things y'all feel you need the most. So we really appreciate that. Like you say, you went from 120 or 30 items down to 34. So thank you for giving it that scrutiny, because as has happened, particularly if we focus on some pay adjustments, we're not going to be able to do all these wish lists for all the departments, but we're going to do our best. Councilmember Shade.
And I think that screen was taken off a little bit premature, but what is the overall increase, Chief, percentage-wise from previous budgets to this year's budget?
If we were to add everything that was requested?
It was 3.8 million, I think.
I asked what percentage that would be.
That would come close to, we have about a $40 million budget right now, so maybe 9 to 10% increase.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. But that's not including any pay adjustments.
No.
Correct.
Right.
That's just mainly just operation related expenses for the most part.
Well, there are several personnel requests in there, and
Right, I saw
again, the largest one, the very first request for those 15 positions, just as a reminder, we do have a grant application in with FEMA, and if that gets picked up, then that would be 100% funding of those positions for 3 years.
When will you hear back on that, do you think, Chief?
So the original timeline that FEMA told us was that all the grants would be dispersed by September 30th. But what we're finding is they're way behind.
Right.
And it doesn't look like they'll get them all out by September 30th. We're trying to get an updated timeline from FEMA. We just haven't yet.
Would surely be helpful, of course, if we know that before we, do our final budget.
Absolutely.
Deliberation. We hope to know by then.
Yes, sir. And we'll do what we can to track something down. And when we do, I'll pass it over to you and Councilmember Shade as public safety, and then certainly Amy.
And I guess it goes without saying, but y'all explored any other grants that would have covered any of these additional expenses?
Yes, we have. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you much.
Yes,
all right. Anybody else? Back to you, Amy. You want to talk about our budget process, where we're at, where we're looking at the next little while?
Sure. So we don't have anything scheduled, I think, until not next week, but the following week. So we'll go over the rest of the budgets then, which would be IT, police, I hope, public service, and TNT.
Okay.
Those will be the ones that we go over next, and I'll send you their lists, their request list before then, so you can look them over.
Great.
And then we're doing an inventory of all the revenues to Councilmember Appel, so we can have a chat about that. So you can see all the revenues that we currently collect and the last time that they've been increased. So we're looking at that too, so we can have some information, so we can have those discussions as well.
You mean like fee revenues and stuff?
Yes, all the fees that the city currently is collecting, we're doing an inventory of it. And then I've asked for us to look and see when we raised those fees the last time. So we'll have that information as well.
Interesting. Amy, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, so
Good
those
job.
are some things coming up.
Councilmember Waring.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had to step away for a minute while Chief Courier was doing his presentation. Did he address the compensation issue with the firemen at all? Is that built into his numbers?
Which issue?
Compensation issue with our firemen that's been coming, to the microphone and signs around the neighborhoods and all of that. Has any of that been addressed? And how it will be addressed coming into this new budget?
Chief, you want to respond to that?
Yes, sir. I was just getting the camera set back up. Nothing in the fire department's budget deals with the annual salary or the hourly rate assigned to firefighters. That'll be K-Cross working on that. What our budget did address is different incentives that we could put in place to drive up the performance in the fire department in areas like the special teams, restoring a percentage increase to personnel who do the extra work, say for the hazardous materials team or the marine team. So those were things that we identified as potential routes to compensate personnel more. And specifically, those are the people we're asking more of.
Well, I guess maybe let me just get to the bottom line. When we finish this budget, will we address the compensation issues that the rank and file, I call them rank and file, firemen have been approaching city council meetings, talking to us individually, having signs along neighborhood streets. Is any of that going to be addressed? Maybe I should ask that of the mayor in this budget.
Mayor, do you want to take a stab at that one, or you want me to?
I think, council member, that will be handled in a more global way, regarding all of our employees. And so I think the answer is no, that it wasn't specifically outlined in these budget requests here today, because we're working with HR and finance to do a more global, if you will, pay adjustment for all of our employees.
Listen, I know we may not get this answer today, but certainly by the time we get to voting on the first reading of the budget, I would hope whatever recommendations that the chief may have in that regard to compensate his rank and file people from top to bottom would be known to all of us. I don't want to vote on this budget when it comes to this compensation issue with all the employees, but in particular the firemen who've been more vocal about theirs, not knowing whether the question has been answered.
I'll circle back with Kay and with Amy just to find out where we are specific. I think the mayor's right. It's probably a global conversation, but if we can drill down a little bit into where we are specifically with the fire department, I think we can probably better start to answer that question.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You go ahead.
So I think, we are looking at that and in those beginning pay rates as well. So we did a little bit of adjustment, right, for the fire department as well in that beginning pay rate. And so some of what we did is also going to go into 23. You all approved that because we have to fix some of the compression issues and all of that. So there will be more to come in terms of a global, but also taking into consideration the study that Ryan did for all of the beginning pay and seeing what we can do for everybody in the city, police, fire, everybody, to get those beginning pay rates more where in line where they need to be, and then pushing that through the pay plan. So that's where I see this going, and just seeing what we can do, in that regard. So it wouldn't be every single city employee.
I agree. I just, through this process, I certainly would like to know get it answered, please.
You'll know because you're going to be in it.
Okay, great. And one other thing, wasn't there an issue about potentially combining the fire marshal with the fire department? Is that going to be addressed anywhere in this budget?
So I was chatting with Chief Jalazada at some point last week. I believe the strategy that we're going to engage in is to take fiscal year 23 to come up with a proposal that will take to Kay and to the mayor and to Amy to integrate the fire marshal division into the fire pay plan in fiscal 24. So we want to make sure that we're pretty thoughtful in that, and with all the other pay conversations that we've had, we know we have to address the fire marshal's division, but we want to make sure that when we do, it's what we actually need to do. So we're going to take the first couple of months of fiscal 23 and hammer something out, so we'll have it as a budget proposal for the next year.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief. Amy, process.
So that was it, really. Just in 2 weeks, we'll go over the rest of the departments. They'll be able to present their budgets to everybody, and we might need to find a couple extra meeting times, especially since we're going to be going through all those revenues and all that. So I'll work to do that, and we've got a lot of work to do.
Absolutely. Any other business to come before us? Hearing none, we're adjourned. Thank you all for I know a long meeting after a long one last.